Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, where we help new and beginning teachers navigate through those crazy first years of teaching so you can maintain your sanity and personal life. Here's your host, Kim Laprie.
Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kim Laprie, and this is the podcast for new and beginning teachers who don't want to just survive those first few years, but actually thrive. Today on episode 49, I'm diving into the topic of receiving feedback and using it to improve your teaching. Now, this is part 3 of a series on feedback. And so the first part in episode 47, I talked about how to ask for better feedback. In episode 48, I discussed how to use student feedback and student data to help improve your teaching. And today, I want to talk about receiving it. I mean, as teachers, we will receive a lot of feedback, and especially if you're a new teacher, and how you deal with it will determine how successful you're going to be. But first, I would love it if you guys would leave a voicemail. So if this is the first time you've heard about this, I'm featuring the voices of my listeners. I'm inviting you guys to click on the link in my show notes, call the number on there, so I have a number when you click on the link, and leave a voicemail about why you love teaching. I also have some questions for you to answer when you leave the voicemail. And honestly, I have to say it's been really amazing to hear from teachers from around the country and the types of schools that you teach in and your particular situation. I love hearing about it. And for those of you that are international, if you're in Canada or you're across the pond or on the other side of the world, it would be so amazing to hear from you.
My name is Jennifer Kronk from the Assist Learning podcast. I'm a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual hosts. Make sure you check out all the other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com and get ready because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
So as a beginning teacher coach, I often hear new teachers saying things like, this doesn't make sense. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so overwhelmed. And then I give them some tips and advice, and they keep doing what they're doing. So then I hear, this doesn't make sense. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm overwhelmed. So what is it about receiving constructive feedback that makes us shut down or ignore it? How do we take something that, from the giver's point of view, was well-intentioned and transform that into an attack? How can we reframe the feedback we receive and use it to improve our teaching? Now, as a coach, I have a unique freedom to give helpful feedback to my mentees. In fact, of course, they expect it. Some have been more receptive than others and take action. And honestly, those have been the ones who grow the fastest. And, it isn't to say that what I deliver is the best advice out there. Any number of veteran teachers would probably say the same things I'm saying and, maybe even in a better way. But the difference lies in the receiver of that feedback or the mentee. How they take it and run with it will determine their level of success or ongoing frustration. So let me backtrack just a bit. Now, the reason why I said that as a coach, I have the quote unquote unique freedom to give feedback is because after a certain point in their careers, a lot of teachers don't want to receive feedback anymore. They dread the regularly scheduled evaluations, and they feel like they're being attacked or are underappreciated, or they find the feedback from their administrator to be not very useful. And, you may have already met some of those teachers in your school. They're the ones who are always quick to tell you how to do something, but when another person gives them a suggestion, they have an excuse as to why that won't work, or they just blow it off. They have the answers, but nobody else does. And if an admin observes them and gives them any kind of constructive feedback, they just dismiss it because the admin was a crappy teacher in their day anyway, and they have nothing useful to say. I know, a little bit harsh, but that's what they're thinking. So when coaching a new teacher, the relationship is different, and therefore I can be more direct than an administrator would feel comfortable doing with a teacher who has 10 years of experience, and you can see why. And the reason why I bring this up is because the feedback you receive from your mentor and your admin are coming from two completely different perspectives. So first, your mentor. Your mentor is there to guide you through the process of starting out with teaching and keep you from freaking out and completely falling apart. Often, they're there to let you vent your frustrations and, provide you with strategies to overcome obstacles that you are always going to overcome. They may lesson plan with you, and hopefully you let them observe you so that they can help you fine-tune your delivery or your classroom management. And overall, they're just there to be what you need from them and when you need it. So they're like your cheerleader and give you some tough love. So I think of like a sports coach, okay? But an administrator has different expectations. Yes, they can be there to listen to some of your frustrations, but only to a certain extent, you guys. Well, they know you're a new teacher and, they expect that there's going to be some ups and downs. You don't want to give the impression that you can't handle your own classroom. They can point you in the right direction in terms of getting specific help, and sometimes they don't know how to tell you how to fix it, so hopefully they'll tell you where to find that help, like I mentioned in episode 47. But a large part of their job is to give you direct feedback to improve your teaching, and then come back and see whether or not you accomplished that. And if your district has tenure for teachers, tenure TnURE, meaning more of a permanent status as opposed to being probationary. So if your district has that, then your admin has to determine within the time that you're probationary whether or not you're cut out for teaching. That way, if you're not meeting their expectations, they can let you go before your probation is up. I know this is sobering to hear and not very pleasant, but it is the truth, because once you become tenured, and if you're not shaking out to be what they were hoping you would be, they're stuck with you. Okay? So their job is way different than your coach or mentor. Now, the reason why this distinction is important is you have to compartmentalize the type of feedback you receive and what you do with it. So since your mentor and admin have different agendas, but both want to see you succeed, you need to think about how you react and act to both. So it doesn't mean that one is more important than the other. No. The feedback you receive from your admin is more of a directive. You need to get this done if you want to keep your job. The feedback you receive from your mentor or coach helps you achieve that goal. So one is just as important as the other. You need them both. So here's the problem that I encounter the most. Teachers letting their ego or other hangups get in the way of truly listening. I mean, listening, processing, and acting on feedback. Here's why. So I found that studies have shown that beginners of any skill want to hear more about what they're doing well and what their strengths are. They want reassurances that what they're doing is okay and that they're on the right track. And this is completely understandable and valid. I mean, you already know as a beginner you're stumbling, so you want to know which parts you are doing right so that you can feel better. Now, those with more experience typically want to hear specifics on what they're doing wrong and correct it. And this is because they have some years under their belt and want to refine their practice. They want to get closer to that expert level, and they don't really need those reassurances anymore. They just feel more confident. But as a new teacher, you need to hear it all, the positive and the negative. In the eyes of your admin, you don't have much time to get it together before they make a decision about you. And also the success of your students, well, that relies on your ability to keep your classroom in control, to build relationships, and deliver quality content. So this means that, you guys, there is no time for excuses, your ego, and hurt feelings. And I'm truly sorry if that comes across as harsh because you're new, but you already don't have much time with your students as it is. I mean, think about it. A school year really isn't that long to accomplish what they want you to accomplish, what they want you to teach them before they move on to the next grade. So we need to separate our emotions from the feedback and stop seeing it as an attack on our personality. It's not about you as a person. It's about your teaching. And as someone who's new, you already know that you're not confident in what you're doing. You're confused. You're overwhelmed. So you need to separate the active teaching, which is your job, from your personality. So remember, they're not attacking you. They're just trying to tell you what you need to fix with your teaching. Okay. And, let's say that you're having difficulty with classroom management. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or that you're stupid, but it can feel that way when we're hearing it. But we got to separate the emotion from it. And so I want to tell you about another study that I read. So this one discussed the praise sandwich. I'm sure you've heard that. And maybe you even use it with your students. It's where you start with a positive, follow with something constructive that they need to work on, and then end with a positive. In this study, the majority of people only heard the positive comments and ignored the negative. When it came time for their annual review at their job and they received something like a needs improvement, they were confused. It's because they dismissed the constructive feedback. If you dismiss the constructive feedback from your admin or your mentor, you're not only risking losing your job, but you also risk never really improving in the classroom. So that puts you at risk of burnout early on and leaving the profession. You're going to end up wasting all of that time, money, and energy to become a new teacher. Now, you may recall a time when you received feedback that seemed really hurtful, sometime in your life. And you know what? It probably was. I'm not discounting it. That problem lies in the fact that the person giving it wasn't very good at their delivery. I mean, we can't always help that since we can't change people's personality. And I'm sure you have a family member who means well, and the way it comes across is just really naggy and negative and hurtful. So there's just times when you just can't get it out so that the other person doesn't get offended. But what you can do as the receiver of that feedback is push past the nasty tone and listen to the message, the underlying message. Your kids don't stay lined up in the hallway. That's disruptive to other teachers. Well, let's think about this. Yes, you do have 5 students with ADHD and it's hard to keep them still. But what can you do to improve how the class behaves in the hall? Do you agree that they are not acting the way that you would expect them to act in the hallway and that you're just kind of letting it slide because you don't know what else to do? Have you seen other teachers with students that line up perfectly and quietly and quickly and you don't really know how to get there? So maybe there is some truth to that statement and it's not a reflection on you. Remember that we're separating the emotion and we want to think about whether or not, despite the delivery of it and the tone, whether or not it's actually true. Now, on the flip side, you may have received feedback that was only praise. Woohoo, you're perfect. You are awesome. No, that should actually be concerning. In this case, you might actually want to dig out some constructive criticism out of your mentor or admin. Now, in your head, you might be thinking, okay, Kim, why would I want to hear negative things about my teaching? Well, it's not necessarily negative. That's our perception. It's constructive. And you want to hear it because you want to improve. And I'm going to tell you right now, nobody is good their first few years of teaching. Nobody. So you need to know what you need to work on. So now you have the feedback, right? Let's say that you asked for it and you received it, or you didn't ask for it and you got it anyway. Maybe you have this visceral reaction when you did receive it, and now's the time to reflect upon it. Now, for me, I can tell you that when I hear someone disagreeing with my teaching practice, I have a visceral, physical reaction. I can physically feel the sides of my mouth droop, almost like a sad face emoji style. I feel my jaw tighten and my breathing quickens, and I can feel myself mentally becoming defensive. But I've learned to ignore that and push it aside. And I force the corners of my mouth to either go flat or to go up into kind of this tight smile. And then I force myself to really listen. And then I reflect. So I think about the aspects of my teaching they discussed and try to be objective about it. Do I stand at the front of the room too much? Do I not circulate around enough? Are my stations too chaotic? Could I tighten up my transitions? Now, if you still don't believe them, whoever the giver of this feedback is, then go and observe another teacher. Are they doing whatever it is you were criticized about? Or are they doing what the suggested fix was? How does their classroom run? What can you apply today as well as plan to work on in the long run? So as a new teacher, you are going to drastically change the way you teach within the next 5 to 10 years. Whether that changes for the good depends on the type of feedback you receive and what you do with it. If you find your mentor or admin repeating the same thing to you, then you're not getting it. Stop fighting it. Figure out how to fix it and ask for help. If you're overwhelmed and freaking out, and your mentor gives you suggestions, then take them. Yes, you are entitled to vent and complain about your day with them. But if you do that with your mentor or admin, then expect that they're going to give you unsolicited advice on how to fix it. It's kind of their job, is to help you get through these problems. Okay, if you just want to vent and just have someone just listen, you can preface that with, I know I'm being irrational right now. I just need someone to listen, or talk to another colleague who's not your mentor or your admin, or even your friends or family. But just know that your mentor and your admin have a job to try to help you through this. And unless their advice is completely cuckoo, which I doubt it is, you really need to listen. So I'm going to end today, guys. And I know that, Einstein is often credited with this quote. Although, and you may have seen this, my research has placed doubts in terms of its origin. So some people are saying it's not Einstein, but people like to credit it to him. Anyway, so the saying goes, the definition of insanity, and in my mind, failure, is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. You've heard that, right? You've seen it. So listen to the feedback and do something about it. Take action and become the better teacher you know you're destined to be. So I hope that you're finding this series on feedback useful. I'd love to hear from you if you are, or if you have more questions, or maybe you disagree with something that I had to say today. You can email me at kim@teachersneedteachers.com, and I always reply. And again, I'd love it if you guys would leave a voicemail and take just a few minutes to tell me why you love teaching. You wouldn't be here if you didn't love teaching. You wouldn't either be in the classroom or try to be in the classroom if you didn't love it. So please take some time to leave that voicemail so I can feature you on a future podcast. And I will be sending you a Teachers Need Teachers podcast sticker. Thanks for hanging out with me today, you guys, and have a fabulous week.
Thanks for listening to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast. Love this episode? Head over to Apple Podcast or Google Play to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.